I want to say something to you. This is not my talk, but it's something, I feel it's important because throughout my life, I've been a wordsmith. Probably if I hadn't been a rabbi, I'd be a lawyer because I believe that words matter. That's why the whole religion thing, I feel very deeply about because we use words and misuse words all the time. So for example, I'll give you an example. When people say, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. To me, makes zero sense. What is spirit? What is spirit? What does that mean? Is it connected to something or if it's not? If it's not connected to something, then it's placebo. If it is, so what is it connected to? But we're so used to throwing out concepts that are fluff. I don't know if you're feeling this, but to me, it's got to mean something. Words mean something. Just like if somebody says, you know, you're ugly or you're stupid, it means something. So too, spiritual means something. As a matter of fact, if you want to understand what spiritual means, it actually means of the spirit or of the essence. You understand what I'm saying? There was a terrorist whose name was Ahmad Yassin. Ahmad Yassin, those who are into Israeli politics, you should know this name. He was known as the wheelchair cleric, not the one from the United States, but the one who started Hamas. It was the spiritual leader of Hamas. He was called the spiritual leader of Hamas. Now Israel decided to get rid of Ahmad Yassin. So how did he do that? How did they do it? So they made 2 attempts. They were going to blow him out of the sky, except that he had too many people around him, and Israel, being Israel, tries to avoid collateral damage. The 3rd time, their helicopters came. They saw him pretty much alone in his wheelchair, and 2 Tomahawk missiles were aimed at a wheelchair and blew him so thoroughly out of existence that no remnant of him was left. That's like overkill. You know, take 2 missiles and aim it at a wheelchair. But that's what happened, and the spiritual leader, the one who riled everyone up to kill Jews, was no longer. And for the next 10 days, and this was about 10 years ago that this happened. You could look it up. For the next 10 days, America, in the American newspapers, it spoke about the death of the spiritual leader of Hamas. Spiritual. And every time I saw it, it bugged me. And it bugged me because I want to call him the placebo spiritual leader. Because he's only connected to the spirit or essence if the spirit or essence of reality is jihad. If killing innocent civilians is, now of course I know what they mean. They mean the one who they consider spiritual. I get it, obviously. But the concept of calling a murderer a spiritual leader means he's connected to a spirit. And you're not unless the essence of reality is to blow up people. Right? Spirit means of the essence of something. Years ago, they wanted to change baseballs to orange so they shouldn't get lost in the light on Twilight in Major League Baseball. Again, this is a long time ago. They wanted to make them orange. And they wouldn't allow it, like they had votes, they wouldn't allow the baseball to be orange, even during Twilight, even though some were like dropping right next to the outfielder because he lost it in the lights. They wouldn't allow it because they felt it ruined the spirit of the game. Somehow making it go from white to orange. So the spirit is something that's real. Spirituality is synonymous with truth. So if somebody says, well, I'm not this, but I'm spiritual, I say, you know what? You know how I feel spiritual? I drink tequila. Sorry, that shouldn't be on video. But is that spiritual? No, that's placebo spiritual. It's like breathing in and out of a paper bag until my head feels floaty. Right? It's not spiritual. What people say spiritual really is, listen carefully, it's not spiritual. It's the feeling that I would expect spirituality to feel like if I experience spirituality. It's not the essence, not the thing. It's the feeling that I think the thing will give me. Understand? So I'm not connected to, it's not a spiritual experience. It's the feeling that I think a spiritual experience should give me. So I can feel that by drinking tequila, but it's not connected. And if you're following this thus far, that also means you can have a real spiritual experience and feel nothing. Because I'm not speaking about the feeling, I'm speaking about the actual experience. You could have an experience of being under the chuppah with your beloved, and your mind is so discombobulated because it's such a big moment that you have to look back at that moment and then feel the moment, which is legit to look back and feel. But it could be spiritual. Grand Canyon, you stand there and you see the majesty. That could be real spiritual because you feel the magnitude and the majesty of the universe. That's real spiritual. So don't let people get away when you go back into campus with the word spiritual. Oh, he's a spiritual. Are you connected to truth or are you not? If you're not, then it's placebo spiritual. It's not connected to the essence of the spirit of the matter. This leads me to the second point. I wrote an article about this for the UCLA Bruin many years ago. UCLA Bruin obviously is their newspaper, UCLA, and it had to do with a concept called brainwashing. And I say this because when you come back, there will be all sorts of people away there answering, you've been brainwashed. Again, as a wordsmith, I reject it categorically. And I'll tell you why. Years ago, I was involved in fighting Jews for Jesus. Jews for Jesus was very popular on the UCLA campus, and one of the centers for Jews for Jesus was right by Bruin Walk, right there. And we spoke about cults and brainwashing, and I said, you can't throw out the word brainwashing without consequence. So what is brainwashing? And then let's see if what happened over here was anything of the sort, okay? So brainwashing has an actual definition. There is such a thing as a cult that exists. There were the Moonies, there were the Hare Krishnas. They exist, and they use the following techniques. Number one, they remove you from your family. They disconnect you. You're not allowed to contact your family, and this way they isolate you. Number two, they change your name. You're Sung Young Moon. You're something. You can't be called Jessica anymore. You can't be called Sam anymore. So you lose your family. You lose your identity. They have severe sleep deprivation, right? They wake up at 4 in the morning. And so someone says, oh, we sleep deprive you on Akiva. No, you stayed up and I went to sleep at 11 every night, right? So severe sleep deprivation, cutting out from family, changing name, relinquishing all physical possessions. That's another hallmark of a cult. A cult that brainwashes, takes away, you can't own anything of this earth. High sugar diet. Anyone? Yes, very, very high sugar. Because the reason they do that is because when you are on a very, very high sugar diet, you get very high highs and very low lows. And it throws you out of whack. It throws you out of whack. And don't worry, I did all these studies trying to figure out what it was. I'll give you the reference material. It's very methodical, and there is a mantra that's piped in, usually through a loudspeaker, that's found throughout the compound. So here's where you have to picture. If you want the perfect way of brainwashing someone, here's what you do. You tell them they cannot contact their family. They have to change their name and not use their original name. You have to deprive them of sleep severely. You have to create their diet in a way that they're thrown out of whack. You have to pipe in a mantra again and again. You know what a mantra is? It's like that one message again and again and again and again and again and again until people are saying it in their sleep. Again and again and again and again. And what that does is it strips somebody of their very essence. As a matter of fact, if any of you have a Netflix account, you can actually go. This is something that interests me a lot because I'm very, very into an intellectual approach. And even though we did music on the trip, and I love music and I love the emotion, I don't thump a Bible. I don't even have a Bible. I don't thump a Bible. Hey, you're gonna go to hell. You never heard that once. This is all. Let's figure out what's the ramification of quantum theory. We spoke about the minutia of gravity. Like we went into intellectual things. I don't believe that you can fairly take a person emotionally and deprive them of their sleep, of their food, of their family, of their name, of their possessions, of their message, and then, because that's what brainwashing actually is. It's a real evil thing. It's an evil thing to do to somebody. Here there was a professor, and he gets up in class and he says, did you know that time is measured differently on the ground and on the top of a skyscraper? What? Did you know that?
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. Definitely is. Now, you wouldn't notice it because it's so minute, but because gravity, right, gravity affects time, the closer you are to Earth, the slower gravity will go. So if you are released from the bonds of gravity even so much, the time will be a little bit different, right? You look, it's Einstein, I didn't make this up. So this is a relativity. Relativity works like this. It was very hard to notice because our space travel is in its infancy. It's really, guys, listen up, it's really just beginning. However, this professor gets up and he says, did you know that time is different on the ground and on a skyscraper? And one student stands up and says, stop. Nobody listen to this professor. He's trying to brainwash you. He's brainwashing you. And he's like, don't listen to him. Don't listen. Nobody listen to what he's saying. And then the professor says, sit down, sit down, sit down. He says, the professor looks at them and says, did I just deprive you of sleep? Did I pipe a mantra in? Did I give you a high sugar diet? Did I cut you off from your family? No, you know what I did? I gave you information. I challenged your intellect. It is the refuge of the coward to hide behind a rock and scream brainwashing every time they hear information that's uncomfortable. And that was my article in the UCLA Bruin. I just quoted almost verbatim. I tell you this because it's the easiest thing for somebody who has not been to Israel to say that Israel's dangerous. Right? Yeah. It's the easiest. Oh, there's terrorists that are running amok. Right? I'm not saying there aren't evil people, but in general, was anyone really scared to go to Ben Yehuda? Not too much, not too much. And yet, because they haven't been there, because they haven't experienced it, they are nervous. In that same way, a person who has not been on a Jewish exploration trip cannot relate to what you just experienced over the past 2 weeks. They can't. They simply can't. They can't. They haven't been at Tzfat as the sun set. They haven't been to the grave of Rachel, both Rachels, and understood the power of the Jewish woman. They may have not been to the Holocaust Museum, not the fancy one in Yad Vashem, but to the one built by the survivors and seen bars of soap made out of the fat of Jewish people. Maybe they haven't heard a lady stand up and say, I was embarrassed of my own daughter because of her deformities, and saying it, not trying to put errors about her, but saying how ashamed she was, but how now she understands how people are and their challenges. If they haven't been to these experiences, if they haven't written a letter in the Torah ever, or brought that down to the wall, if they haven't heard a Rav Gav speak, if they haven't experienced standing on top of Aish on Friday night, watching delicious and wonderful and beautiful humanity come and dance and sing, and that perfect breeze hit you, and you just feel the kiss. There's a mayor told me, he says, I feel like God's kissing me. To feel that kiss. So what are you going to tell them? Hey, came home with tzitzit. Whoa. Oh no, brainwashed. You can't understand what it means to go to the kotel every day, what it means to hear a theory of everything, which was a long class, but where unabashedly we say, why is it that we believe what we believe? We're not tradition, let's dance and sing, but let's figure out what, why, where, and when. It's just, you can't experience it. The best thing I can compare this to is when I went to Poland. He just went to Poland with me. You could hear about the Holocaust again and again and again, but until you're in Auschwitz, you don't get it. You just don't get it. You think you get it, but you don't. You have to be, you have to be in front of a gas chamber. And you have to be able to visualize 500,000 men, women, and children, and then you still don't get it. Don't think you get it. But at least you got a little bit of it. You understand that this happened on Earth, not in some black and white horror movie. In that same way, the people that you go back to won't get what you experienced. And that's okay. But you get it. Okay, so to synopsize everything we said today, number one, we spoke about spirituality being a word. It's not it's not the way it feels, but it's something real. It's the essence of something. It's not a placebo. And therefore, when somebody says, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual, so you have to ask them or ask yourself, if you're the one saying, what are you connected to? The spirit, the essence of what? The essence of what? If you can't answer that with something that would make sense to a professor, then you're going to get stuck. The essence of the universe. Oh, again, words. What is the universe? The universe, what is the universe? Space. It's strings. Right? What does that mean? Don't let yourself or others get away with words that are meaningless. It's not the way a thinking person lives their life. Spirit means the essence of it. Either you connected to it or you're not, but don't be in this weird no man's zone where you could feel good about it, but you're not really connecting. Otherwise, you're just feeling a spiritual feeling, but it may not be connected. That's why every religion feels spiritual. Even religions that were made up 20 years ago, they feel spiritual. But is that spirituality or pseudo? Next, we spoke about brainwashing, and we said brainwashing is a real thing. It's a real thing. Don't let people throw that word out. Make them accountable. Hold them accountable. Say to them, what, do you just use words? Is that what you do? Use words? What does brainwashing mean? How does it work? There is a real thing. Anytime someone gives you information or brings you on an experience, you say, oh, brainwash, I'm not comfortable with this. Right? There is a concept called brainwashing. It's a horrible, it's a sinister concept, and you close the person off, and it's like dripping, drip, until the person loses all identity. That's not what's going on here. And anyone that you met who's been back to Israel, who has rediscovered themselves, is Racheli brainwashed? No, she's just strange. But no, I'm kidding. I love you. No, yeah, I love you. Racheli, right? When somebody's done, and she's Rabbi Meir, right? Brainwashing is a real thing. Don't let people throw that at you. It's unfair, and it's words. It's words.